Today is the 3rd of December, and it's the feast of the great St. Francis Xavier, the 16th century Jesuit who became the apostle to the Far East, to India, and to Japan, and to the Malacca Islands, and into Indonesia, far, far, far away from his native Navarre, which was then part of Spain. It was a century of great disruption in the life of the Church in Europe. Christendom was fractured with the Protestant Revolution. But just as Martin Luther was nailing his 95 Theses to the church door, there was the formation of the Society of Jesus. And around that time, other great saints, as well as St. Ignatius and St. Peter Favre and St. Francis Xavier and St. Philip and St. Teresa of Jesus of Avila, St. John of the Cross, Pius V, Charles Borromeo, lots of saints came at that crisis time. That's what God does. He did it with Francis of Assisi. He'll do it now. He's doing it now with you. And as I say, if you're not going to be this saint, if you're not going to be saints, there's no bugger else going to be saints. If you're not going to make sacrifices and prayers for the world, there's nobody else going to do it. Do it. Anyway, I'll just give a brief life story, really, and some of the impact he had. His family were, as I said, from Navarre, which is part of that maybe Basque territory up in the northeast of Spain. And his family never thought they belonged to Spain at all. They were independent separatists. In fact, his two brothers fought in an insurrection against the Spanish crown from the Portuguese, or from the Basque and the Portuguese assisting them, I think. And for that they had half of their family castle torn down and their lands confiscated. So really Francis is coming from a bit of a troublesome family, a politically active family. They know what they want, they have been struggling, and now they've reached a state of relative poverty, really. His home languages were of Navarre and of the Basque. The Romance languages and Portuguese he'd been familiar with well. That's important for later on. But then he went to university, of course not in Spain at all. He didn't go to Salamanca, never. He went to Paris. But universities were international organisations, as more or less they are now. You go and meet Erasmus students all over Europe land. So he went to Paris, and the lectures, of course, were in Latin, so anybody could go and everyone understood. And he shared a house there with another student, Peter Favre, who was French, and an older man, 10 years older, Ignatius of Loyola, a noble man in his own right, from a noble family, but come to the school after learning Latin with children. So not a great education. A bit of a fanatic now, had a soldierly life and a dancing life at court, but now had got religion seriously. Anyway, this roommate of theirs set about converting them. He converted Peter Favre, but he wasn't going to convert Francis Xavier. He was a practicing Christian and all that, but he wasn't going to be too enthusiastic about it. He had a life at court planned. But for a time, Peter went away, and Ignatius had Francis to himself. And at the end of that, he wanted to join Ignatius on whatever Ignatius was going to do. So there are a few of them, a little group of them, made vows at Montmartre, at the Basilica of St. Peter there, not the not the 19th century building, the ancient building around the corner. And he made those evangelical vows, poverty, chastity, and obedience, and a special vow to obedience to the Pope, and one to go off to the Indies should they be required. And so from there, they eventually ended up in the Italian peninsula in Rome, seeing the Pope, and they sort of came together there in a really remarkable way. Their missions were starting to open to them. All sorts of missions were starting to open them. Educational missions, and of course now the missions. The King and Queen of Portugal wanted to send missionaries to their dominions in Portugal, based in Goa. So Ignatius had to choose some people. He chose one of his Portuguese colleagues, and Simo Rodriguez, I think he was called, with an S, and another one, I can't remember his name, it's like Tom Bombadil. Anyway, a Spanish chap. But I think the Portuguese chap got ill or died before, so he sent Francis Xavier instead. So he was a sort of accidental missionary to the Indies. He probably chose him because he spoke some Portuguese. And, yeah, that's fair enough. Let's use his talents and see what happens. So they went to the King and Queen of Portugal, who sent them with great letters off as their ambassadors, and also letters from the Pope as his papal ambassador to Japan and China and over there. It took 13 months to get to India. They stopped at Mozambique for a while, which was a Portuguese African territory, and brush up on the language for Xavier, I suppose, and get to know who was who in Goa. And they got to Goa. There was a bishop, there were clergy, there were practicing Christians there, but they didn't really go out of the walls. They didn't go and see the indigenous population much, who were also Christians, far, far, far longer than Europeans had. But eventually Francis Xavier did go out, well, quite soon actually, and he was welcomed by the Thomas Christians. They welcomed anybody. They set up a seminary there, and they flourished there in Goa. That was their great headquarters. And from there, being a seaport and the Portuguese having a seafaring empire, he was able to go with the Portuguese into other areas as well. He was taken to the Malacca Islands where he worked. He was taken to Ceylon, the island just off India, where an Oratorian later was going to become a missionary. As he spread further and further out, he realized that his work was great. It was massive. There were so many people to be converted, and so many people ripe for conversion. He sent letters home to Paris. Will you get those flaming clergy out of those lecture halls and send them on the missions where they might do some good? Or a similar sort of vein to that. There's so much here in the harvest of the Lord. I need help, massive help. Send people, and they'll reap a rich harvest for God. St. Philip and his friends in Rome got hold of some of these letters. They were published around Europe. And they were reading these at their oratory group one night, and they thought, this is amazing. This zeal is amazing. It's exactly what we want. And in fact, Philip sent several off to join the Jesuits. And Philip himself wanted to go as a layman. Then he wanted to go and was he a layman? Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, he went to see an old monk outside Rome, and he said, no, Rome is to be your Indies, Philip. Rome is to be your Far East missionary conversion. Stay here, but do the same work as they do. And he did, and you know the story. For all that fame, and all those hundreds of thousands of people he baptized, and all that good he did, in the hospitals in particular, wherever he went first of all to the hospitals and spent months and months working in the hospitals. And they thought if he did that, he could do anything. It makes a COVID ward look like a walk in the park, some of those. And he loved people. That was very clear, especially the poorest and the lowest, and he loved everybody, but they were more in need. So he was seen to do that. He was seen to use culture, beauty, music, those things. We see to win men's hearts, not just to destroy them, to win them to God. But for all that, he died by himself, really, maybe with an Asian servant with him. There's a picture of that in the Jesuit Street and Farm Street in London. It's very evocative, actually. But he wasn't by himself. You're never by yourself when you die. Lots of people there. Lots of your old friends. Saying, come on now, you are exhausted. And you're ill. And you've done the work that God's given you to do. Now come and rest. And come and grow more. And come and have another great influence on the friends you leave behind, us. So ask his prayers for the society. It's a lovely big statue in their church in Manchester. Say the prayers for the missions. He knows what to do, very clear-sighted. And great zeal. And great friends. So, may God's holy angels guard your goings out and your comings in. And be with all those whom you love, both in this world and the next. God bless.